We knew humans were weak as they avoided every war with diplomacy. We never imagined they'd be this ruthless, and how seemingly overnight they went from peaceful beings to a state they call total war. War is in their blood and soul. They thrive on it, mostly when the odds are against them. Examiner, have you reached any conclusions? The hollow video lit up in the center of the laboratory. The face of Praetor Index filled the void in the center of the room. Yes, Praetor. The specimen you provided was intact enough to draw a conclusion, Examiner Zendex replied. If I may ask, how was such a faultless specimen procured? By accident, Examiner. Zendex could hear the embarrassment in the Praetor's voice. The Klee were notorious for their ability to plan. To have a complete human specimen simply fall into their possession as an act of luck was an insult to the Praetor's ability to calculate probable outcomes. Still, it was likely that the additional information to be gleaned from studying a full anatomy could very well prove the turning of the war. I see. Zendex obfuscated his disapproval outwardly, while in actual fact he was enjoying the Praetor's discomfort. No less than 12 successors to the current Praetor had all tried to turn the tide of the galactic conflict, over 50 cycles, and none had succeeded. For all his braggadocio, Praetor Index had proven equally incapable of mastering the necessary variables to overcome this foe. Not that it wasn't a complex problem. Please, state your conclusion, then propose the underlying premises, the Praetor encouraged. Of course, Zendex paused, wondering if the magnitude of his discoveries would be fully communicated, much less appreciated by the greater Klee Protectorate. The additional information gleaned from this specimen leads to the conclusion that this war will be over in less than 2 cycles. The Praetor bared his mandibles in a sign of satisfaction. Ah, we have it then. What is your margin of error? The Examiner balked. To ask the question of an examiner of such high esteem was almost an insult. Within the 99th percentile, Praetor. Then by all means state your premises. It was customary in Klee society to state the conclusion of an encounter first, then reveal the necessary background information informing the deduction. To save on the need for pointless interactions, a subordinate would typically accept the conclusions of an elder. This was given to the Klee's exceptional ability to calculate probabilities into several dimensions of thinking. To inquire into the basis for a deduction was to show interest, and thus respect, for the proponent of the conclusion. The Praetor was clearly showing great respect for the examiner's presentation. Such deference deserved a thorough exhibition. I direct your attention to the specimen, Praetor. The lifeless body of the pale human lay limply on the examining table, its various entrails and organs neatly stacked in a small row next to it. As you can see from the Scorian readout, the circulatory, digestive, endocrine, exocrine, muscular, and renal systems of these humans are typical of a Class 4 evolutionary primaton species. Other than the digestive system's ability to vacate a surprising number of toxins, these systems are rather unremarkable. The presentation continued, analyzing each biological strength and weakness in turn. The Praetor patiently listened. The Klee had conquered thousands of species in galactic combat. No race had been able to withstand their superior minds, being able to calculate and adapt to thousands of permutations and possible outcomes, and so it was supposed to be a simple conquest of this backward human world. Their superior numbers and technology obvious, the Klee had offered the humans a dignified surrender almost simultaneously with their invasion. The Klee War Council had noted that the humans preferred to rely on diplomacy, which loosely translated basically meant mutual surrender, with neither side a victor. Words were a decent enough tool to fend off aggression in some cases. But without the might to back up those words, the Klee knew better. Despite its 1,000 years of peace with its neighbors, the Klee knew that no diplomacy would be enough to prevent Earth's capture. At least they thought they knew. Despite the analytical approach to the invasion, this unremarkable species had left cataclysmic destruction in its wake. Generally, an intergalactic war took 1, maybe 2 cycles to conclude, especially when victory from one side or the other was all but assured. Once both sides concluded that victory was inevitable, a ceremonial surrender was typical. But the current conflict had lasted over 50 cycles, and the waste of resources had nearly drained the Empire into insolvency. It wouldn't be long until the outer systems calculated weakness. These humans did not conform to any known parameters. In most conflicts, multiple circumstances could be calculated, re-evaluated, predicted, but not humans. In one iteration, humans would behave conservatively, almost to a fault, giving ground even when obvious advantages could clearly be seized. In other encounters, they displayed a recklessness and ferocity known only among the unevolved. 50 cycles later, and they were just as impossible to predict as the day the Klee invaded Earth. The Earth invasion was a disaster by any tactical standard. It had been studied, reanalyzed, reinterpreted, but no solid conclusions could be reached. Upon landfall, the humans initially reacted as any other class for Promadon. Family units hiding in fear, communications disrupted, military responses disorganized. And then, as if signaled by a Praetorian elite, something changed. The humans responded with the ferociousness and recklessness of an unevolved reptile or arachnid. Forces were marshaled imperfectly but effectively. Counter-offensives with no seeming probability of victory nevertheless succeeded. And once some Klee technology was in the hands of the enemy, the situation went all down system. Native humans with no military training whatsoever were taking up munitions and retaliating with no regard to their own existence. Elite human units advanced toward certain death. By the time the provisional government envoy arrived to impose judicial order, the humans had routed all 36 expeditionary squads, including the capital ships. How in the Nexus they even got up to the fleet centers remains a mystery, as human technology simply wasn't advanced, past placing geosynchronous communicators in their own orbit. To add insult, the humans used the captured fleet to commandeer the undefended bureaucratic envoy just after its arrival. And then? Then they repurposed the envoy to proclaim victory, making the Klee administrative apparatus assume the planet was in conquered status. It wasn't until a whole cycle had passed until the Klee elite had noticed there wasn't any tribute. But by then it was too late. The humans had adapted to the technology quickly, not just to seize and use it, but also perverting Klee technology to suit their own destructive ends. From there, 49 cycles of interstellar destruction and chaos across entire systems. Unlike other spacefaring species, the humans seem to have no respect for cosmic order. It is as if they must repurpose the universe itself to match their fleeting lifespan. They damage anything in their path to achieve even minor victories. Anger toward a conqueror was to be expected, but the patterns appeared to demonstrate a malice toward the Klee that could not have been predicted from an evolved species. Using space-folding technology, they used a Klee warp engine to fold out the orbit of a key military installation, shifting it into the path of a black hole and damaging the habitability of 3 separate colonies. They strapped fusion reactors onto refueling pylons and sent them back into the prime nexus, haphazardly destroying or crippling 13 production outposts. In one engagement, a system neighboring a production facility with no military value was completely destroyed, a seemingly pointless act. But worst of all, in every encounter their soldiers and pilots show no regard whatsoever for their own personal safety, at times letting loose fission and fusion weapons of their own design, which spread fallout throughout half the Klee protectorate. It has made the end of the conflict nearly impossible to manage. Zendex was reaching the zenith of his discoveries. As you can see, Praetor, the reason for the human success can be found exactly here. Notice the cognition center of the nervous system. The examiner clicked gleefully. You will observe these humans' cognition center at the forefront of the main fractural lobe. While several segments below multidimensional thinking, it is enough to form a middle lexus of cognition. Yes, examiner, we knew that. In most post-simulations, the humans clearly perform below a tri-tier cognitive prediction, but we've noticed definitively that they react chaotically to threats. Every species has self-preservation as its guiding locus. Every species but this one. The Praetor's deference was clearly waning. Right here. Notice just under the greater nervous connection. The examiner gestured. What? It can't be? That's a second? Brain, yes. The humans have a backup brain, Praetor. A lesser, reactive, less evolved cognition system. They are simultaneously evolved and unevolved. It was impossible. No spacefaring species had their animal brain. They all evolved past it in order for the cognitive system to evolve a capacity for the complex mathematics needed to discover advanced space technologies. And yet, there it was. A slightly underdeveloped cognitive brain connected to a slightly overdeveloped animal brain. How in the nexus did they adapt our technology with only a Tier 3 cognition? Trial and error, I suspect. But that would mean, yes, many of them likely died attempting various permutations. Why would they seek out such danger? You will notice the adrenal gland here, Prater. These creatures experience the full weight of their animal emotions. Fury, Prater. Unevolved rage. And they can discern the consequences of danger in real time. React to threats. I doubt they do the complex math in each iteration, but yes, these beings have the twitch reaction time of animals. We mistook their maneuvers for Tier 4 cognitive calculation, but they can still think abstractly in this state. You have now calculated the essential problem, my Prater. Humans, like animals and unlike us, experience the full protective fight and flight biological mechanisms of heightened awareness, malice, spite, malevolence, and to be clear, also instincts of protection toward tribe. And yet while in this state, they still maintain an ability for abstract thought. It engenders a creativity never before found in our known galaxy. Wait, so the collisions into the 8th Fleet last week by the unarmed human supply ships? Intentional, my Prater. I discern they knew the encounter was hopeless and chose extinction. Chose extinction? So they have the full cognitive awareness of their own impending destruction while in this state? You will recall, Prater, the human leader of the convoy communicated his desire that we procreate with our own matriarchs before causing the collision. This likely indicates that the animal fight instinct combined with abstract connections to their tribe suppresses a single human individual's need to survive. In other words, they can self-destroy for a tactical advantage, if needed. A reasonable conclusion, Praetor. Examiner. A being that cannot be threatened, cannot be predicted. I concur. Then when you said the war would end in less than 2 cycles, you meant by our defeat.